All right. Hello, everyone. This is Justin. I'm with Hometown Social, and today we have our Internet Marketing and E-commerce Town Hall. I'm going to be your host today, along with my co-host, Katie, and she's also my sister. We're both the owners of Hometown Social. Hometown Social is a boutique marketing firm that creatively positions why you exist in front of those you serve. So we are a small agency that buys into who you are and your products and gets to know you from the inside out. And we become a little bit obsessive about you and your network. So we take contractors and team members and we kind of mix everything together, play the middleman, and also apply strategy. We've been in internet marketing now for about 3 years, but we've been in marketing and business operations our whole lives. So looking forward to helping you guys today and answering some of the questions that we have from last week. We've got a few people coming in from different states. So if you guys want to jump into the chat and let us know where you're checking in from, and then also throw in a couple questions that you have so we can go ahead and get started. So I've already kind of kicked us off. And looking at the agenda for today, we're going to do our Fast Five and a quick overview where we jump into some of the tips and some of the insights from our week in internet marketing and how we service small businesses. And then we'll jump into some of the questions that we had left over from last week, and then hopefully get to some that we have in the chat. So really, if you're ready, Katie, and you want to start the Fast Five, you can. If not, I can go.
Yeah, if you want to get started this week, and I'll just jump in right after you.
Yeah. So today I wanted to focus on LinkedIn, the company page. So there's a few tips and tricks and some of the things that I've kind of worked on in our last content plan that's focused on our company pages and leveraging thought leadership through that. So the one is we want to start with is information on the page and making sure that your bio, your job positions, the products that you offer, any pictures or contact information that exists on your LinkedIn page. We want to make sure that that's up to date, and we also want to make sure it's correct, and we want to make sure that it's proofread and made sure that every part of it looks professional, but also is engaging and is driving somebody to an action where they'll be able to connect with a team member of some sort. So make sure it doesn't just go into some random inbox and sit there unaddressed for a long period of time. You want to make sure it's going directly to a team member and they know how to handle these things. One of the things too with that is making sure that any job opportunities that you have and any specifics that go along with that are available through some of the upgraded pages. And we'll look more into that if you guys want. You can ask a question and we'll dive in. Some of the other things now is content. So what content do you post from your company page? And that's kind of where the rest of the Fast Five come into play. We want to focus on content that is open to thought leadership engagement. So we want to post questions, talk about the industry that we serve. We want to talk about any kind of new or important information or something that may have changed the game for your industry, as well as things that are exciting. So sharing that from the company page and then leaning heavily on your thought leaders, your owners, your executive team, your engineers, whoever it might be, to go ahead and engage with that, put their 2 cents in and share it with their community. LinkedIn is a network of professionals, so you want to make it more leaning on the individual and the content coming from their brain and who they are, rather than having it be generic blanket statements and having the company talk about these things. You really want to open it up to thought leadership. That also points to consistency, and then also hashtags. So being really consistent and being active is the best way to continue to let the algorithm favor you, and as well as leveraging hashtags and making sure that you have a strategy of what you're trying to be searchable for, and sticking to that in the content and the topics and the subjects that you discuss. So that's my Fast Five for today. And I look forward to helping people grow on LinkedIn and leveraging the community that's there.
Hey guys, I will jump into my Fast Five. You might not be able to tell, but for those who have been consistent listeners week to week, you might notice Justin and I sound a little stuffy. So very appropriately, my Fast Five this week is about how to work from home while you're sick. It's a very practical bit of tips and tricks, so I will dive right in. First on my list is to be realistic and to be kind to yourself, meaning, yes, we work from home, but if you do need to call out, make sure you call out. You need your rest. You need to make sure you can get back to tip-top shape. And if you overextend yourself and you don't get the amount of rest that you need, you'll be sicker for longer and you won't be able to get back into your routine and serve your clients the best that you can. But more importantly, your health and safety comes first. So definitely make sure you're kind and you're aware, and you don't over exude, your energy. And if you need to call out, make sure you call out. Second, delegate and assign out any high priority items. As soon as I knew I was going to be sicker than I thought, I made sure to get with my team and give due dates and give very specific instructions. I got all of the information out that I could as best as I could from the very beginning so that people could be working on things while I was resting the first couple of days, and then I dove back in. It just kind of helps get all the important stuff done. That way, you can rest knowing that the big stuff is being handled from the rest of your team. On that note, though, if you don't have a team working with you or somebody who can do some of those items, make sure you just communicate with your client. We're all human, and if you need a couple of, extra days to get some things done, just communicate professionally. And I'm sure, it'll be better at least to let them know that you're going through that. Number 3, make sure you have what you need. This is more of a general human to human tip than work specific, but as soon as you get sick, I always like to go through and make sure that I've got all the medication that I think I'm going to want. That way, if I do want to, rest and really kind of hanker down, I don't have to leave the house or do anything like that. So I usually check, every so often just to make sure I have that, because you don't know when you're going to get sick. But that way, I'm able to kind of get up and work a little, rest without having to go out and, have the need for things that I don't already have here with me. Number 4, establish work blocks if you don't already do this. Justin actually got me into work blocks, and maybe that'd be something we can dive in later today if we have time to. I'll make a note of that really quickly, or something we can go into in a different time, but work blocks are excellent. I'm actually going to write it.
Yeah, the work blocks are used throughout all major innovators and people that we think of as high achievers. There's a lot of good science behind the 90-minute cycle and setting aside time to be doing deep work rather than staying at a really surface level task. Now, there are certain positions in the C-suite that will demand different types of focus, but there's definitely a benefit in scheduling out time that allows you to go deep. And really, we started off by having like 6, and you can't do 6 very deep blocks, but you can do at least 2. Some people can do 3, and then having tasks piled up for you to sit down and say, okay, this 90 minutes is going to be focused on knocking out boom, boom, boom. Scheduling something and putting it on your calendar shows emphasis and importance. So I definitely love the block scheduling.
Yeah, maybe after this, we'll kind of follow back into that. And I kind of have made my own creative version of work blocks too. And I'm sure we've touched on it a few times here and there, but it's definitely worth giving it some deliberate time to kind of discuss and go through, because I think you and I work really well from the work blocks. When it comes to being sick, I use this to my advantage as well, though, because I kind of broken into 2 or 3 big chunks of the day where I could work, and then the other chunks of the day I could rest. I actually was pretty sick this time around, so I did need a couple of naps, which is not usual, but because I work from home, I was able to make it work with the work blocks, and I didn't miss anything, so it made it really easy to kind of get back on my feet, not miss anything, still feel like I was productive, but then be able to totally crash when I needed to, so it was really helpful. Number 5 on my list is to prioritize tasks and create a plan for missed work and new work. I kind of remember this back when I was in high school or in college and I would miss class for, traveling or something else. And it's really hard to get back into the groove of things, because now when you get back into your schedule, not only do you have current items that need to be done, but you do need to make up for what you've missed. And so within the block schedule and within, creating that schedule when I got back to work, when I'm getting back into work now, I definitely made sure I had my high priority items, in the beginning of what was going to get done. But then I leave some time for like SOS and emails and new tasks that are going to come up and be part of what my balancing act, I guess. So those are my fast five. Definitely doing all of these things right now. I'm so glad the first thing I did was delegate out some tasks and stuff, because there were a few big high priority items that had to happen, ironically, as soon as I got sick. So definitely glad to have a team, have our team that we were able to lean on. But this is a kind of a foolproof plan that helps me get back on my feet when I'm sick, especially since we're still going through a little bit of a pandemic here. So I'm sure everybody's had some experience
right.
with this.
Yeah, I think the major skill that when I look at what's transforming our business and what has potential in the future is really leveraging and delegating to team. And one of our core values is ownership, and we look at the best models for success, and that's at every level. A team member takes pride and ownership in their work. And I love the model that we operate in, because we work with other contractors and other business owners and people who are putting their name directly to the product or service that they're putting out. So it really makes it something special when an event like this comes up where you're sick, or you have to really delegate because you start to get busy, or there's an emergency that comes up. And having a team that takes ownership and pride and agency over their responsibilities is the best way to build a successful team.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so important, to think of all of the different pillars of our business when we're hiring, either for employees or for clients. We want people who we resonate with and people who we connect with on the same basis. And for that reason, we took a lot of time and effort to deliberately go through every single pillar of what we wanted our business to stand for, which we completely encourage all of our clients to do. We found that a lot of businesses don't have this, and that's kind of the first step when we come in and start working with a brand on developing their brand or making any changes or doing any really first steps. This is kind of one of the big major things that we do right from the beginning with them.
Yeah, I look at a handful of the questions that we have. Some are tactical, and some are more culture oriented, and then also what to do to really outsource some of the tasks that are responsible for marketing. So I don't know if you have anything you want to ask me directly, or if we want to jump into something a little bit more technical Amazon side.
I don't have anything specific for Amazon, but I do have a few questions we never got to over the past two town halls. So if we want to dive in and kind of switch up the flow a little bit, I've got a couple questions that the viewers had for you that we didn't get to.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead, I'm ready.
This was on the tail end of a certain segment that we had before, but since we start every segment with our Fast Five, one of the viewers just kind of asked, what's something that you've learned recently that you wish you knew before? Since we're kind of giving wisdom and advice to our listeners, what's something, a tidbit of information that you learned from someone else recently that you wish you knew before?
There's a lot that comes to mind. Those are basically pain points in mine, right? Things that I look back on the journey and I say, man, if I'd have just done this different, or if I'd have put a little bit more emphasis and made a decision this way instead of the other way, I would have gone through it a lot faster or come out on the other end with a better result. Really, I think it's knowing your role and knowing your skill set, and knowing what you need, and then also being firm and being in a position to hold that standard to the service that you're looking for. So let me explain a little bit deeper. When you're looking at your business and you're a small business owner and you've got 10 to 15 different hats that you wear, understanding that there's no way for you to grow and just work harder, you're going to have to bring in a team. even if you're scared about that, there really isn't anybody who does it by themselves. It doesn't exist. And Elon did not build Tesla by himself. He was really good at delegating and had the vision, and obviously is an incredible engineer and signs off on everything and knows his stuff. But you need to be able to let go of some of the responsibility, accept 80 to 90% as the threshold for consistency, or your level of, if 100% is as best that you can do, and you can find somebody to do it at 90%, then now you've freed up your time. And just being able to have a good feedback loop to correct and improve upon that process with that individual, and leverage other agencies. We've talked about ownership and finding people who really own it and have the experience and are willing to work at project rates and hourlies, and add them in as you need them. But definitely delegating and bringing in more team members and giving them agency over tasks, right? The major one is that I look back on, and I'm going through a handful of these transitions, but the major one is giving people responsibilities with desired outcomes, rather than breaking down a specific project and giving them tasks, right? It's easy for somebody who has a skill set and experience to take a role and an ownership over a project and an outcome, and then determine what steps need to be taken to achieve that outcome, given the parameters and the constraints. So that is the better model than, hey, I need this completed. Here's this, and this, right? A step of 5 steps. It makes it a lot easier to delegate if you do the first example rather than the second. So I'd say that's the biggest pain point that I've had, and one of the things I'm implementing and really trying to strive for in my side of our agency. And you're muted.
Oh, there we go. I'm walking. At one point you mentioned outsourcing some tasks and working with other business owners to find, creative solutions, and creative solutions is one of our pillars. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, just because you really do have to think outside the box sometimes, especially in a more creative field like marketing. We have a lot of, I wouldn't say turnover is a negative thing, but, one of our graphic designers, for example, wants to go back to school. And so that's a position that we've had filled for a long time that, now we're looking for new people to kind of fill that role. And so you do have to get creative with your solutions sometimes, I guess, pun intended, and go out and find more talent. And sometimes they are other business owners. And if they share, the same philosophies as you, it makes it a lot easier to be able to, delegate work and work with them moving forward, since you kind of stand on the same things, which is great.
Yeah, I'd love to know your take on that. If you look at what you've learned, and you can be a little bit more technical here if you'd like, and be Amazon specific if you want to, but looking at your journey, some of the parts that you've overcome, and then what you might have done differently, or maybe not done differently, but now you would apply if that same scenario or situation came up. I'd love to hear what experience you have in that.
I guess right now we are in a more unique position. We've got a few virtual assistants that we've been working with, and they do such an excellent job, with a lot of the more tedious tasks, or things that require a lot of following up, or things that require multiple steps. And so for the first time in my career, I've been focusing on more of the planning and the delegating and the organizing and the strategizing, and some of the really complex deep dive situations. And I've been able to use the virtual assistants to do, like listing creation and troubleshooting with images and troubleshooting with listings, especially for bigger projects that are really sticky. And so that is something, new and unique to my role with Hometown Social, is that we've got access to some virtual assistants who are just totally kick-ass, excuse my French, but they really are. And so we've been able to kind of all work to our strengths and work together to really grow some of the accounts that we've been working on. So it's not necessarily something that I've learned recently, but it is a new addition to our team that's been really, really great in growing our accounts, which is exactly what we want. So
it's fun how in removing yourself from certain steps improves the quality of work. There is a learning curve, and there is some difficulty on a few of the things that we've had to implement. We haven't always done it exactly right, but it looks like here now we are really starting to hit our stride. So keeping that in mind, that we can't do everything, but what we can do really well, and we can outsource. And by outsource, I just mean give ownership and responsibility and agency to somebody who has experience. So definitely a major pillar of our success and what's going to drive a lot of the success moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also just one more piece of that, being an entrepreneur, being someone who prides myself in knowing a lot about Amazon, it can be really difficult to give over tasks. And I know a lot of other entrepreneurs are probably control freaks, and something you mentioned earlier, you might be afraid to give out some of those responsibilities, but as soon as you do, it does free you up for the opportunity to do other tasks, which has been, just instrumental in the growth. So I just wanted to focus on that for a second, because you absolutely called it, in the previous conversation. So it was worth circling back to.
One of the things I want to point out is one of our larger clients who is an electronic manufacturer. We work a lot with the C-suite guys and the subject matter experts. So some of the stuff I talked about earlier with the LinkedIn accounts, we really don't have the ability to just hand them a outline with 5 questions and saying, hey, Mr. Engineer, who's running an entire team of 10, can you please answer this and type us out 1,500 words and try to stick to these topics for SEO, right? What we learn is that it's best to quickly jump on a call, ask them the 5 to 10 questions, let them expand upon the information, and then turn it to our team internally and say, hey, here's all this information. Here's the questions. Can we ghostwrite for this subject matter expert? And then turn that back to them for them to proofread. So you look at it from that perspective, and that's how a team can really come together to fulfill these we can fulfill the content plans that you look at major corporations doing, and you're like, how does this team have so much time to sit and just write articles? Well, it comes a lot from ghostwriting and a lot of layups that are done by lower level team members that then are able to be stamped by higher team members that approve and want to use their voice and add their spin to it. So that's one of the ways that we leverage a team to expand what's capable in a business.
I'm glad you were able to provide such a specific example, because I think what's really great about podcasts, especially business podcasts, is when you find a podcast that talks about a category or a niche that you're really interested in or that you work with, when you're actually able to take away concrete advice and be able to implement a skill or a technique just from listening to a podcast that could really help some aspect of your business or your operations. I think that's a huge win for podcasts, and the whole reason that, our viewers love to listen to it. And I think the tip that you just gave and the connection that you made is going to help a lot of business owners out there in content creation. So I think that was really helpful.
Yeah. And when we look at the niche that our clients in, it's very specific and it's really technical. But what we were able to do is grab some retired people in that space who love to write, who understand the industry, the ins and outs, the problems that are faced by the prospect, and we're able to apply our strategy from our meetings. And really, I guess what I'm trying to say is that we operate the strategy, but we try to put the pieces in place that can fulfill those needs for the strategy to work, and leveraging others who have been in the space and are technical experts to fulfill and represent the teams that we work with is one of the major ways that you can exponentiate the impact that your company has and reach.
No, I totally agree. That's great. We mentioned a couple of things earlier that I know you've learned from, some of the greats. Obviously, you mentioned Elon Musk, and we've talked about work blocks quite a few times throughout our podcasts. It just makes me think, since we like to share so much content and we get so much good content from others, who are a few, I don't know if they're podcast owners, or I know you watch a lot of YouTube, but who are some of the guys that you really pay attention to and who give you a lot of good information, like, how to implement work blocks and different techniques like that?
Well, that's an easy answer. I've got a handful of different ones that I look at. One of the pillars that I really try to think about when I look at what we do is to maximize creativity, maximize our ability to think and connect information, and also to perform. And all of that comes from you being in a state that is, without jumping and copying people, you want to be in a state that is in abundance and you completely believe in what you're doing and that there's potential and that it's worth putting in the energy and emphasis and work into what you're doing. So a lot of those philosophies that I have mentally come from Tony Robbins, and I do enjoy a lot of the free content that he has on his YouTube channel and on others, and some of the podcasts that he's done. He's got a lot of great insight on that. I'm a big ownership philosophy guy, so I really like Jordan Peterson and his platform, and there's a lot of pieces of that really can get controversial from a 10,000 foot view. But when you dive into it, you start to realize that it's really good content that empowers you to look at your life and where you can take ownership over things and how that applies to everything else. When I look at what is one of the fundamentals for being in a state that allows you to achieve and accomplish and focus and think, a lot of it comes down to nutrition and lifestyle, making sure that you are getting the right amount of sleep, that you're getting sunlight, and that you're eating the right types of diet for you that makes the most sense, that lessens inflammation and focuses on nutrition or micronutrients that really allows your brain to just go crazy with the neurons and all of the reactions that go on. And where I lean most for that is a guy named Andrew Huberman and the Huberman Lab podcast. Really enjoy his stuff there. There are plenty of doctors that are on YouTube that break down their thoughts. And I challenge people to go and look at different types of diets and different types of meal plans and different types of protocols. But I think that you'll fall back to Andrew Huberman and his protocols for sunlight, for rest, for work blocks, for focus, and for energy. And you'll really find a lot of great stuff there. And, there's plenty for exercises that you can follow, and I can continue on and on. I'm a big fan of a lot of these guys. So those are the platforms that I follow, and I feel help me maximize who I am and my ability to deliver for our clients.
Thanks for being vulnerable there. I know sometimes it's hard to spotlight and pinpoint certain, I wouldn't say influencers in that realm. I think, they're a little bit more than that in a lot of regards. They're education giving, and, they're just really well researched, but it's tough to kind of pinpoint sometimes. But I've learned a lot talking to you based on what you've learned from them. And we've seen a couple of them in person. And I think that a lot of our viewers and just anybody out there, would really benefit from figuring out what makes their bodies, peak perform, in whether it's mentally or physically or whatever it is. But that's how you get the best performance out of yourself and inspire the best performance out of your team and ultimately get the best success for your business. So it all boils down, to the core. And I think having those strong philosophies and having others to look into can definitely help and inspire.
Yeah, I think one of my pillars for my personal brand is to be intentional. So if you're being intentional, then that means there's a desired result that you're focused on. So what the outcome is that you desire and that you want and that you're working for, whether that's a work-life balance that just means that your career is fulfilling and that your life at home and the way that you have your relationship set up is something that you enjoy. Whatever that ultimate outcome is, to be intentful and to be purposeful, you really have to look at the feedback that's coming to you. And if you're stressed, if you're overwhelmed, if you feel negative emotion, lean into that and celebrate it and say, wow, that means that, this is standing out to me. This is uncomfortable. This is difficult. That's a good thing. That's a sign from your subconscious or whoever you want it to be from, however you want to label it. That's a sign that there's something wrong here and that it needs addressed. And most of the time, you know what you need to do to solve it. If you sat on the end of your bed and you said, what am I doing right now that I could stop doing? Or what am I not doing that I can start doing to make things better or to achieve at a higher level? You're going to give yourself the answer. You'll know right away. And finding what you will do and what you can do is, defining that and going forward with that will ultimately lead to less stress and more agency and more hope and all the stuff that I think runs us as human beings and is why we exist. So yeah, I could talk for another 30 minutes on this. I know we just reached the end of our time. We talked mostly on culture and some values and some of the beliefs that Katie and I have. So we didn't really get into any technical questions, but that's okay. Katie, if you want to close us out, that's on you today and your responsibility, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks so much for joining, guys. If you have more questions, we love to get emails. We've got a few comments here that I'm sure we can address next week, and we will see you again this time next week.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.
Bye, guys.